Welcome back to Sunday Vibes, ladies and gentlemen. It is another Sunday. The Premier League is still back. I love to see it. I'm joined by some great people, Doogie and McCubbin. I feel like we've been on a lot of shoots this week.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people have been off. Pat's been off. Joe's been busy, so on and so forth. McCubbs, how you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, not too bad. Yeah, big week. Myself and Doogs were on Sky Sports News yesterday, which was fun.
Yes.
Nice to make my TV day. I realised, actually, we were on Sky Sports News together a couple of years ago, but that was from our bedrooms, so it wasn't really the real thing. So that's been nice. I think Henry and Obber are in the studio at this moment in time. So all the Football Daily boys making big moves over the last couple of weeks.
If you guys want to see us on Sky Sports News, that is happening basically every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday for what could be the rest of the season. If you have already seen us, let us know in the comments below. We appreciate the support. Dukes, how you doing, mate?
All good. Feeling a little bit physically intimidated by the size of my mic stand against yours. It's like you versus the guy who tells you not to worry.
I'd love to say that represented something, but I don't think it does.
It's like the evolution of mic stands.
Yeah, it is. But we are going to be talking about a very hot topic today. And I found this really tough. If you've not seen by the title, today we are going to be picking the most overrated player in the world in each position. I found this really tough because I find it quite hard to call a player overrated. I think, especially when everybody kind of my echo chamber are people that have quite sensible football takes, I like to think. And so when I'm then looking and someone might, and like the traditional, like someone might say that person's overrated, I actually feel like they're normally quite rated by proper journalists per se. But Doogie, do you want to go first with the goalkeeping position?
I'm going to be the judge, by the way, just to say. And I will, I do feel for you guys because I didn't really have time to do any research for this, so I became the judge. But you two also haven't had much time at all either. So
shooting from the hip.
You're both shooting from the hip. I agree. Overrated is a tough one to do, but I'm interested to hear what your arguments are going to be because I feel like you're going to have to make some pretty good ones. I'm going to take a lot of convincing here.
Well, kicking off, in goal, I've got a player that I think is slightly overrated, not super overrated. I've got more overrated players, but I'm going for Ederson of Man City. James behind the camera already shaking his head, but yes, the 30-year-old is now in his 7th year at Man City. Massive respect for everything he's won. But I just think in the last few years, there's been a notable dip in his performance. He's actually underperformed his post-shot expected goals. So the saves that you'd expect him to make to prevent goals, he's actually underperformed that 3 times in 6 full seasons at Man City. Last year, his save percentage in the league was 23rd out of all goalkeepers to feature, which is really pretty low. And yes, he is an exceptional long-range passer. I'm not saying that part of his game's overrated. I think it's crucial to their system. I think it gives them a massive outball at times. And he is phenomenal at that. I mean, last year, for example, completed over 60% of his long balls over 30 yards. Onana last year Onana over the last 5 years has only hit that tally once. And he's known as this amazing long-range passer. So Ederson is, I think, the best passing goalkeeper in the world. But I think his shot stopping has gone under the radar as a little bit under par. And he's known as a great sweeper keeper as well. I don't think I've seen that much. I think he often is quite easy to beat on one-on-ones, quite different from Alisson. I mean, last year, for example, his defensive actions outside of his penalty area, which considering Man City play a high line and often dominate the ball, he only did 1 more than David De Gea, which, is quite surprising in many ways. David De Gea, known as a goalkeeper, he's very good on his line, but little else. So I just think Ederson has had a slight dip in his performances that has led to him being, if not overrated, maybe overappreciated, and people haven't noticed this recent decline.
Okay, yeah. I quite like that argument personally. He's in a treble-winning side. I think that instantly can overrate a player a little bit if they're not necessarily performing to the level of, say, other players in that team. Zach, who have you got?
I have gone for somebody that we've actually heard of a lot over the last few years, probably since when Ederson moved to Manchester City, but we heard of him when he was 16 years old. Gianluigi Donnarumma.
I consider
two very strong shouts here.
I think the thing with Donnarumma, right, is we've been watching him play since he was incredibly young, and especially for a goalkeeper. I mean, he's only 24 years old now. We look at that still for an age for goalkeepers as very, very young and nowhere near their prime, and a lot of them haven't even become established first-choice keepers at times. And so Donnarumma has had an incredible career already so far by going from AC Milan and becoming such a young goalkeeper there and becoming the number 1 so quickly, to then obviously taking this move to PSG. But this is somebody I think when he was very young, we all spoke about as possibly going to become the best goalkeeper in the world. And obviously he's still got lots of time to do that as well. But it's not happened just yet. There have been a lot of mistakes at times in high pressure situations for PSG in the Champions League. I will say during the Euros he was really, really good.
I think he was player of the
I
tournament.
think he was fantastic during that time, and I think that's one area that shows maybe obviously being such a young age that will come more consistently later on in his career. But this is somebody that we've been speaking about originally when he was 16 years old as that best goalkeeper in the world, you know, in the next 5 years or so, and that's obviously just not happened yet. I will say at the same time he is probably in a league which isn't getting as much coverage for goalkeepers as, say, if he was in the Premier League or even if he was in the Bundesliga, or possibly if he was back in Serie A, where we'd seen like Mike Maignan obviously get this fantastic coverage and Onana get this fantastic coverage. And for PSG, I think people just kind of expect like, okay, he's in goal with a team that should be winning the league every single season, so he's meant to do this. So I think maybe part of it is the fact that he's just not had that media look on him just yet, and obviously he's got plenty of time for that to happen. But it's consistency as well. It's again, this can come with a young age too. It's his consistency in the goal. It's those mistakes that he can make at sometimes the high pressure situations that can really kind of put him on this mark. Now look, when you are paying the fee and the wages for someone like Donnarumma and obviously the future of Donnarumma, you are expecting somebody who will be one of the best in his position. And I think the way people sort of talk about him or kind of have this view of him is like this incredible goalkeeper who is very good. He is very good, but he isn't quite at the level that I think people discuss about him casually. I think people always say that if there was like a top 3 goalkeepers in the world, top 4, people might talk about him like that, and he's not. If we're being realistic, he isn't. He can become that. He can become the number 1. But just now, I don't think that's
not even sure
quite
he's
where
top
at.
5 personally.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I've heard enough from both your arguments. I really like I think actually, if I was doing this, I might have gone for Donnarumma just because I feel like Ederson has received a bit of stick this year. This is really tough. I think I might go for Ederson. I did like your argument, Dukes. I think the thing is with Donnarumma is that he's been part of a PSG side that's a bit underperforming in total. Yeah. I think Ederson, part of an amazing team, and perhaps last season in particular, he didn't pull his weight performance-wise like a number of those other players. So I'm going to give it to you, Dukes. I'm going to stick Ederson in there, even though I think Ederson is one of the best keepers in Premier League history. I think on current form, given how strong City are, I feel like maybe he is, like you say, overappreciated perhaps a little bit compared to his teammates. Okay, Zach, you're going to kick off.
Yes, lads, I'm going to go for right back. And again, I really did find this hard. Like this whole team quite difficult to go and put somebody in because it felt super harsh, really, for anybody that I put in. And so I've done...
What's the name of the game?
Pedro Porro. I've done Tottenham Hotspur's Pedro Porro, who's obviously only been there for 6 months, but he came in for a huge fee. And look, sometimes the fee doesn't necessarily dictate on whether they are rated, overrated, or underrated. But for Pedro Porro, he's somebody that was brought in to be this kind of, or known as this right wing back, flying forward, less kind of defensive work for him. I think a lot of Spurs fans were super excited because he was a super exciting young player and still is a super exciting young player. But I just don't think he is quite the level that people talk about, actually probably expect him to be. This is somebody, I think, when he first came in, people talk about conversations of, could he be the third choice to, Trippier, Reece James and Trent Alexander-Arnold? That's not happened, and that's probably not going to happen if I'm being brutally honest. He's obviously now playing in a very different system with Ange Postecoglou. Obviously, he does want his fullbacks going forward. But in a 3-back formation, he was essentially a right winger. He was essentially a right winger, especially when he was playing in Portugal. And I think currently for Spurs, that's not what's going to be happening. He can develop, he can improve. Obviously, if he can improve his defensive work, he can become more of an out-and-out fullback rather than a wing-back. But he's not the kind of 5th best right-back in the league, that's for sure. He might even be 7th or 8th, if I'm being brutally honest.
Okay. Diggy?
I've got a big name. I've gone with Achraf Hakimi.
Ooh.
So
PSG are taking
some
absolute
hits.
pelters today.
So I thought he was absolutely phenomenal, particularly in his time at Dortmund. I think he got 15 league goal contributions in his final year there. Did the same at Inter when they won the league. But since going to PSG, I think he's been pretty underwhelming, to be honest. 9 league assists in 2 years. For a side as dominant, or should be as dominant as PSG, I just don't think that's good enough. His expected assist last year was at 0.13. That was nearly a third of Jonathan Klaus, who was playing for Marseille. He created 42 chances last term. That was 42nd in France. That was 5th amongst Ligue 1 defenders.
Was he playing? Did he played a lot of minutes?
Played a lot of minutes
as well.
Played a lot of minutes.
He's good at the World Cup.
He was very good at the World Cup, and actually his defensive contribution at PSG has been really solid. But I just expected more from a ball dominant, league dominant, or should be league dominant PSG side. I just don't think he's quite as good as people have made out, or at least he's playing quite as well as he should do right now.
Is that because they're not playing maybe the system for him?
Potentially.
Well?
I mean,
it's
he was
the same
used
argument,
in a back five pretty effectively at Inter Milan and at times at Dortmund. But he often played in a 4 at the back at Dortmund as well.
Yeah, true.
And you're playing for a PSG side that are seeing sort of 65% of the ball in most games.
Yeah.
Like, he can get forward and create more opportunities. And I think he's slightly underwhelmed during his time at PSG.
Interesting. I see the point. I see the point from both. Pedro Porro, I think. Yeah, I think Pedro Porro's defensive output has always been called into question, hasn't it? Even though he's played often as a wing back. But I agree. I don't think his first 6 months at Tottenham has been as good as we would have expected. Emerson Royale, of course, kind of taking precedent over him in the early weeks of the new season. We'll see whether that's stayed the same this weekend. But I think I might give it to Hakimi. I just think, 9 assists in 2 years isn't good enough. This is a guy who was considered, up there with Trent as one of the 2-3 best right backs in world football. And I agree, because I think we should have seen more of him at PSG, even if maybe he's been a little bit of a victim of maybe Galtier's style of play last year. He will definitely hope to improve on that this season. So I'm going to give it to Doogie again. 2-0 Zach. Under pressure now with the Centrebacks.
Should we do this in a one-er?
So
We could do them as a pair, maybe.
I think a pair.
Have you both picked 2 centre-backs?
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh wow, you've done a full XI. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
I
full
thought we were just doing in each position like we did last time. Okay, all right, 2 centre-backs. Okay, yeah, do them as a pair.
Okay, I've gone with Christian Romero and
I was thinking about him.
Presnel Kimpembe.
Ooh.
Again, PSG
PSG
Spurs.
and Spurs.
We didn't chat beforehand,
We
so I
haven't.
didn't know Zach was going to include some Spurs players as well. But Christian Romero, he was in that Team Talk episode of who had the better season, Saliba, Lissandro Martinez and Romero. Why is Romero in there? Honestly, he's been fine for Spurs in a very average Spurs defence over the last few years. He's played alongside a defender really lacking in confidence at times, and Eric Dyer. He's obviously had to play alongside Davinson Sanchez as well, who's probably not Premier League level. But I think Romero, he's missed a lot of games with injury, which, does lead to, your team lacking without you. It's a little bit harsh to say that's part of being overrated, but you do need to be on the pitch in order to be rated. And he's also, 22 yellow cards in 66 games
Super
for the club.
aggressive, that's
3 red cards. Last year, through suspension, he missed games against Newcastle, Brentford and Leicester.
Did you say 22 yellow cards?
22 yellow cards.
One every 3 games.
One every 3 games. And he missed games against Leicester, Brentford, and Newcastle last year. They picked up 1 point in those games. That could make a massive difference. 3, games you'd expect Spurs to compete in. Potentially not Newcastle, but the other 2 definitely. He is a good player. I think there's obviously a talent in there. There's a reason that Spurs were prepared to pay that money for him. I mean, their 3 record signings are Ndombele, Richarlison, and Romero, and he's obviously been the best of those 3. But I'd say all 3 probably haven't delivered on the promise that he showed at Atalanta. And he won 63% of his tackles last term. That was 14th amongst Premier League centre-backs. It was below Chris Mepham. I just don't think he's done enough so far to warrant being in these conversations amongst the Premier League's best centre-backs. I think he's a liability. Needs a big season. Overrated at the moment.
Kimpembe?
Okay.
Oh, Kimpembe, just injury-prone, hot head. Similar story to Romero. He has had massive issues with injury, so I do feel a little bit sorry for including him. But I just remember, particularly in that, I think it was a Champions League semi-final against Man City in 2021, getting sent off. I mean, he's had 53 yellow cards in 236 games for PSG, 5 red cards. He's in the bottom 42% of centre-backs for progressive passes, progressive carries.
Yeah.
I think he's honestly at PSG right now because he's a youth academy product and he's left-footed, which is quite helpful to have.
And PSG have been open to selling him before. No one's necessarily come in fully for him.
I feel like no one's ever really wanted him.
There was a time when Chelsea were looking, but I don't think they went for him in the end.
I think that's telling. Kimpembe's almost making it in already.
Brilliant.
Zach,
what's the point?
What you say?
Okay, I've got my 2. Pau Torres, who's obviously just joined Aston Villa, and Antonio Rudiger are my 2.
Is that just out of pain?
No, not at all. Not at all. I'll start with Rudiger. I mean, I think Rudiger is, in a 3-back system, one of the best at it, or at least he was, that's for sure. He was fantastic, and obviously he went to Real Madrid for nothing, so it's quite hard to call that kind of signing a bad signing.
Still, though, huge wages, though.
He has had huge wages, but the issue for him, he doesn't play. Like, he's only now just got back into the side this season because Eder Militao has just become injured. But in their starting, in their best player 11, he's not on there at all. He doesn't feature. It's Alaba and Militao, and obviously Militao's been fantastic, I like to think. Though somebody I saw tweet me saying that he could have possibly been in the in this XI as well as overrated. But anyway,
Militao, do you mean?
Militao, Militao. Okay. But yeah, no, in a back three, he's great, but they're not playing a back three. They've very, very rarely played a back three. It's always been this back four, and obviously he's not the guy to feature. Last season, he was on the bench quite a lot as well. And for somebody that I think after the Champions League final, and even after the season when he was still at Chelsea and then moved on, people were calling him one of the best in the world. He's had one of the statements of the best in the world. And in a back three at that left centre-back position, he was really, really good in that position. He was fantastic and probably deserved the plaudits. But now, if I said to I feel like if you spoke to somebody casually about defenders and went Antonio Rudiger, there would still be this thought of this incredible, one of the best in the world centre-backs who can do it all. And he can when he's playing in a three-back formation. He's allowed to roam forward. But in a four-back formation, and this has happened his entire career as well. It's happened his entire career when he plays in this four in the back. He does look a little bit more vulnerable because he's expected to maybe stay a little bit more reserved and conservative in what he's doing. And obviously in the three-back, he's allowed to kind of roam a little bit more. And so, yeah, like I don't blame him for moving to Real Madrid, and I think that's a great career move for him, but I just don't. I think in terms of now the level that he is performing at, because he's barely playing, drops him down. Obviously, he's now playing because of the injury to Militao. But yeah, that's my argument for Rudiger. As for Pau Torres, this is somebody over the last 3 years or so has always been rumoured to be getting this big move, this move to the Premier League or to whatever club it might have to be, and would cost a lot of money to get him out of La Liga. But because he was this left-footed centre-back who is obviously quite rare, they're very expensive to try and get nowadays to bring them into your squad, it never kind of happened. And I think there's a reason why it never happened, because people kind of realised, oh, this guy isn't actually as good as it's been made out. I think for the level of Aston Villa, it's a good move. I think that's a really good move. And obviously with the injuries that we've seen now to Tyrone Mings, it'll be interesting to see how he kind of fits into that formation. I thought obviously him against Newcastle looked very, very shaky, but we can maybe give him this
scenario there.
It is, and we can maybe give him a bit of time for this adaptation period for this new team and for obviously how playing in the Premier League and a new country, so on and so forth. And again, I'm not saying he's one of the worst centre-backs in the league, but far from it. But this is somebody that I think obviously people compared to joining Manchester United all the time. These clubs that were trying to obviously fight for the top four, and Aston Villa obviously now with where you look at them being, I think it's probably the right level move for him. But he's not, say, the level of De Ligt or these kind of guys that I think are the top level centre backs in the world.
Yeah, interesting. I think this is fairly easy actually. I think Pau Torres and Cristiano Romero certainly are not living up to the hype that they maybe had 2 or 3 years ago, and this might be Premier League. This might be looking through a Premier League lens, because obviously football Twitter, the football kind of twist that we follow a lot is, and the kind of the narratives that we follow are very Premier League based. I feel like I've seen Pau Torres already getting a lot of pelters even before his move to Villa. Romero last year receiving a lot of criticism, and realistically, I don't think he is in that conversation really about best centre-backs in the league. I think he's got the potential to be. Whereas I think Presnel Kimpembe has often, I feel like is still considered among France's best centre-backs when I don't think he is. And Antonio Rudiger, I've always been a bit irked by the fact that one exceptional season at Chelsea saw him suddenly considered among the best centre-backs in the world, when actually before that even a lot of Chelsea fans wanted him sold. And to be fair to Rudiger, actually I think second half of last season he was really good at Real Madrid. He took a little bit of a while to get into the swing of things, but I think Rudiger's an absolutely fine centre-back, but I still think he's a little bit overrated, so I'm going to go Presnel Kimpembe, Rudiger.
One on the board, lads.
One on the board for Zach. Left back, why don't you hit me?
I might get some pelters for this in the comments below. I'm not going to lie. Because obviously this is somebody that was the best left back in the world, but isn't now.
Ooh,
and a lot of that is also to do.
A lot
of that is also to do with the kind of formation and changes that has happened to the squad. I'm going for Andrew Robertson. Now, people out there are going to say, obviously, he got all these great assists last year, and he did. But his performance, I think, if you have to be honest with yourself, when you are talking about the best left backs in the world, wasn't to that level last year. And I do kind of partially blame the formation change, and he's now having to do a lot more defensive work in this left centre back mould that kind of position is now asking for, especially with obviously now allowing Trent to go forward into this midfield role and how Liverpool are now moving into this back three. It'll be interesting to see what happens this year, because obviously he's now getting a little bit older. I wonder whether Liverpool will start to think about what's the next stage of this left back for us now, and how they kind of go forward in that as well. I know they've obviously got youngsters too, but they are more traditional kind of left backs that are bombing down the wing and not necessarily these people that can fit in into this left centre back mould. But anyway, for Robertson, I think again, when you were talking about left backs in the world, his name best left backs in the world, his name will always come up. It will always come up, and that is due to how good he's been consistently over the last 6 years for Liverpool. He has been fantastic, and him and Trent down those flanks have been brilliant with what they've done. But he's not meant to be doing that now, or to the extent he is nowadays. And because of that last season, we saw him, I think, struggle and have maybe one of his first down years since playing for Liverpool. He has been a fantastic left back his whole career, and there will be arguments that Liverpool will say for that flank he might be one of their best ever players to have played there for them and help them with this consistency of high performances. But you saw the drop off last year for Liverpool, and I think a lot of that as well had to do with, obviously we saw Trent getting criticism, we saw Van Dijk getting criticism, but I don't actually think we saw enough maybe criticism for Robertson as well. It will be interesting to see how he gets on this year. Maybe he's kind of used to this role a little bit more, and it will be more successful there. But yeah, I think it'll probably have to be Robertson for me.
Ooh, okay. Diggs?
I've gone for someone less well known, or less higher profile at least, but he has been on the verge of the England squads in the past. I've gone for Tyreek Mitchell of Crystal Palace. Quite niche. You might be saying, why are you getting him?
So niche.
But I just feel like, because for years we've always been like, Crystal Palace need a new right back, Joel Ward can be upgraded. Everyone's kind of just forgotten about Tyreek Mitchell, but he has been a regular at Crystal Palace now for 3 years. He's got 5 assists in 91 league games. He completed 17 dribbles last year. He played nearly every game. He offers absolutely nothing going forward. His expected assists last year were lower than Harry Maguire and Scott McKenna. And he's known as this defensive monster. He's just over 3 defensive actions per 90. I just think he goes under the radar as fairly average.
Interesting.
I feel like when I think of it, he's just a player.
Just there.
He's just there. But that's what I feel like. I feel like that's how he's maybe looked at in general, personally.
I feel like outside of the top 6 clubs, he would be like a lot of people's, along with Aït-Nouri and Tyreek Mitchell would be in the discussion for like best of the rest.
There was definitely a period when he broke through. I remember everyone being like, this kid looks really exciting, and maybe he's just kind of...
To be honest, I found left back quite difficult because not many left backs are particularly rated. Yeah. There's just not a high quality of left backs around at the moment. I just think Tyreek Mitchell just needs to do more.
Okay. Interesting. This is the toughest one, because I think harsh on Tyreek Mitchell. I don't think he's necessarily billed as like some expansive, and I get it. Maybe he doesn't. His defensive actions aren't that high, but equally, that may have something to do with the defensive structure in general. Like you can't necessarily judge a player just by their defensive actions. And then Andy Robertson, like, is he actually overrated?
I don't know if
I don't like either shout.
I don't really like either shout, but I might give it to Robbo just because he has dropped off in the last couple of years a little bit. To be honest, I like Liverpool fans. I know have been the first to kind of say when he's been pretty bad, but yeah, I'll give it to Robertson.
He's still good as well. I think sometimes that's the thing with this title. I think a lot of people look at us saying about these players and take it like they've called them absolute like rubbish.
No, it's
just it's very much like slightly, or like maybe what people compare them to previously, and so on and so forth.
Both sinking shouts, to be honest. So like, get them in the comments. But
basically,
let's move on to the midfield. Zach, do you want to kick off this time?
How do we want to do this one? Do we want to say all of our midfielders, or do we want to say, okay, because I'm playing 4-2-4,
Oh, Jesus. All right. Okay.
I actually found midfield the hardest of them all.
Yeah.
I found two.
How am I supposed to judge this then? Because I'm now going to have a midfielder versus an
Okay, you know
attacker.
what? I'll take one of my attackers that could possibly play midfield,
Okay.
and I'll just
All
chuck
right.
them in there.
Okay.
But they might not be the best out-and-out midfielder.
That's fine. That's fine. I'll just take it on them as players. In general.
Then I'm going to go with Casemiro, Kai Havertz, and Diogo Jota.
Okay,
Wow.
so we'll have Diogo Jota in the 10 role. I
Yeah,
guess.
essentially, that's
Or
what
in the most
that's what I'm
advanced
thinking.
yeah.
Okay, so I'll start off with Casemiro.
I
Casemiro.
suppose Jota, but fair enough.
I'll start with Jota. Like, I think Jota is still considered as like one of these incredible attackers in the Premier League, and I just don't think we've seen it. I really don't. I think he went through a period of Liverpool where he was obviously scoring lots of goals, but I think he's after that injury and like his consistency, he's just dropped off. He is not that. I think he was a good pickup by Liverpool, and he could still obviously improve. But obviously, when they've now got Gakpo, Szoboszlai, Nunes, Elliott, they sent Carvalho out on loan. I feel like I'm probably forgetting a forward. Obviously, Salah's still there as well. He's just. I don't think really. I know he's played a few games this season already, but I don't think he'll be the guy for their future. I really don't. Especially when they brought in Gakpo and Nunes, and obviously still got the youngsters there as well. He's somebody that I think can not necessarily improve. I just don't think he's got the consistency, and maybe that is due to his fitness, and maybe that's due to his fitness. I honestly think he's okay. I think he's absolutely fine to have, but I just think he's not somebody you can rely upon due to fitness. I really don't. He is probably if I'm looking at my entire list, he's probably my harshest shout out of them all, if I'm being brutally honest.
You haven't heard anything yet.
Oh, okay, interesting. But yeah, that's my argument for Diogo Jota. Again, like he's probably my one that I found the toughest as well.
Go on, let's go to the others.
Kai Havertz, I think we've spoke about him lots over the last few
feels
weeks and how
personal.
that is.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily personal, but like I think with the way
Would this
he
shout
moved
have been
to,
made 2 months ago? I'm not sure.
probably not, because I like the Chelsea job. But now that he is at Arsenal, I think when he first moved there, every Arsenal fan was like, oh, he's playing this left centre mid role. He's going to be unlocked by Mikel Arteta. He's now going to be this incredible creative force. He'll be doing all these all these late runs into the box, scoring all of these goals. It is very early into the season, but so far I don't necessarily think we've seen that. He's great at holding up the ball. He really is, and that's fine if you want him to play in a false nine possibly. And he is versatile. Can play on the right. Can play in midfield. But he's not necessarily the player that I think Arsenal fans are hoping for, and I've already started to see Arsenal fans turning on him. He has, I think the thing with Kai Havertz, there's this thing when you watch him where you do realise there is a player in there. There's somebody that can do something quite special. There's somebody that can kind of and myself, obviously, having watched him for the last few years, you're sitting there, your fingers crossed, being like, let this be the game. Let this be the game it comes out and he unlocks it. And you might see 10 minutes of it. And then he gets absolutely bossed by some centre-back from Burnley, and you're like, okay, what's happened here? It'll be interesting to see how he develops under Mikel Arteta. Maybe gets used to this role more so and understands it more so, and he'll be improved. But so far, I'm not yet to see it, and obviously it is early days. The other one, Casemiro, somebody who can still have amazing games, but his legs are going from him now. I think he is probably still considered one. I think that's the casual thing. I think he is still now considered one of the best DMs in the world, and that's not where he is anymore. You are seeing kind of performances that are dropping from him. That isn't necessarily all of his own fault with the way this formation is with Mount and Bruno now, giving him so much space and allowing him to be kind of targeted to have to do a lot of the defensive work himself. But yeah, I think Casemiro as well is another one, and those are the three.
Interesting. Yeah, I feel like with Casemiro, maybe Fabinho vibes last year with the midfield around him not doing the job they need to. Although I do think with the Havertz and Casemiro shouts, early days this season, I feel like, on the basis of 2 games, maybe a little bit harsh. But Dukes, what are we saying with your shouts?
Big ones. Moses Caicedo,
Okay.
Mateus Nunes, and Giovanni Reina.
Reina,
I'll
wow.
start with Caicedo.
Okay.
I feel a bit sorry for him. He's obviously not attached to this fee.
Yeah.
I don't think defensive midfielders, any of them, are worth over £100
I
million.
agree.
I agree, but I'd rather spend £100 million on Declan Rice. Far more Premier League experience. He's shone in Europe. Not just, he was in the Europa League team of the season. He was named Conference League Player of the Year. I just think he's just way more complete, and at least in terms of experience. Right now, he's also 3 years older. Moses Caicedo, for that fee, it could potentially, if the add-ons are met, be the third most expensive player in history.
Yeah.
And I know that overpriced and overrated are slightly different things, but in order to convince a club to spend that money on him, they've got to rate him really highly as a player. And he's just started 42 Premier League games. It's mental. And poor guy is now going to go into this Chelsea side that has been through absolute turmoil in the last 12 months with 24 new players arriving. 4 of those 24 new players I think have already been sold. And he's going to be expected to be a leader in this side. I just think he's up against it with this fee. It is a bonkers fee. I don't think he's overrated as a player. I think he's really, really exciting. But I had to include him. Matheus Nunes, I don't know what City are doing, to be honest. On the basis of last year, I don't see it. I really don't see it. I thought he was hugely, hugely disappointing last year. Wolves is, I think, second record signing, maybe behind Fabio Silva. I just thought he was pretty average across the board. I thought his attitude stunk at times. And yes, he's a good dribbler. He's a good dribbler in midfield, but they just brought Kovacic, whose best skill is probably dribbling through midfield. Yeah. He's not a particularly good goal scorer. He assisted 1 goal last year. He scored 1 goal last year. I don't know why he's being linked and linked to a move for Man City and for more money than Wolves spent on him. On the basis of last year, not worth it. I know that when he played for Sporting Lisbon, Pep said he was one of the best midfielders in the world, but Pep's probably going to say that about Luton this year. He's probably going to say Luton the best team he's faced in years. Yeah. So take it with a pinch of salt. Giovanni Reina feels like the harshest inclusion because he has been so injury prone over the last year. And 18 months in particular, and he's only 20. But I had to find an attacking midfielder. I thought it was really difficult, to be honest. I didn't want to include someone like Bruno, who I think is a phenomenal player, but the Twitterati would probably, some of them would probably think Bruno's overrated. But Giovanni Reina, so injury prone over the last few years, still hasn't, I think, started over 22 league games in a year. And I also really didn't like his attitude during the World Cup when him and his father reportedly brought up that historical stuff about the coach from about 25 years ago. I thought it was a really low blow. Really didn't like that at all, so I maybe had a bit of a personal vendetta against him. But I think he deserves a vague inclusion around this list. But I'm less sold on him than Caicedo and Nunes, particularly Nunes.
Okay, so you got Jota, Havertz, Casemiro, Nunes, Caicedo, and Reina to pick from.
I will say so. With Nunes, what is it about his attitude that stunk last year? I don't know whether I was like watching him.
I think he took a big dip when he was being linked with other clubs.
Because I remember he started last season on fire.
Really well, yeah, and I also
started this season as well.
He started this season well, but he did get that sending off the other day for a really stupid red card, kicking the ball away. But he was used in a variety of positions as well, probably that didn't necessarily suit his game. I feel a little bit sorry for him, but on the basis of last year, I don't know what Man City are doing.
Yeah, I see it with the Man City links. I do see that. I think this isn't too hard actually. I think I'm going to go. I think Casemiro. I think he was brilliant last year, but for me, I think not disciplined enough for a senior player,
and also not one of the best in the world that people talk about him to be.
I don't think. I mean, personally, I don't think he's in the top 3-4 DMs in the world anymore. Still hugely important to Man United, but I think his discipline last year wasn't good enough. I'm going to put Casemiro in there. I'm going to put Caicedo in there. I think
the fee for him is we've just not seen him play for Chelsea.
Yeah, I get that there is a lot of hype, and he may well be in 4 or 5 years' time, top 2 DMs in the world or top 2 midfielders in the world, whatever. Like, I don't necessarily think he's an out and out 6, given his skill set, but. Yeah, Chelsea probably overpaid for him by about, if add-ons are met, by at least 40 or 50 million
pounds.
There are
a lot of midfielders that I think clubs are overpaying for this summer.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think that's just the market,
but the fact that not only Chelsea were willing to pay that, but Liverpool were willing to pay that kind of money as well. Huge potential, but and also we haven't seen him play enough for Chelsea yet. So in a couple of months' time, may look very stupid saying that. He may well be who knows, maybe he will unlock that entire side. And I'm going to go actually for my attacking midfielder, Kai Havertz. I think he has taken a lot of criticism over the last few years. I think he took too much criticism at Chelsea. Yeah. If anything, I think maybe he was mildly underrated. But given just how the expectations of him were a few years ago, this is a guy who was supposed to be one of the creme de la creme by now. At the moment at Arsenal, we're yet to see it. It's probably quite harsh. I think all of these are quite harsh, but I think I would rather give that to Havertz than Jota or Reina. Personally. Is it 4-4 now?
I think it's 4-4 going into the forwards.
I think. Let us know in the comments if we got that wrong. But so you got goalkeeper.
I got
and
goalkeeper
right back,
and Hakimi.
Shared centre-backs.
Yeah. And
You
then
got
you've
a
given them
You got left back. You got 2 midfielders.
Yeah,
Two
4-4.
midfielders.
Okay,
4-4.
interesting.
Going into the forward line.
It won't be. It won't. This one will have a winner.
It
Oh, we'll always
It
have a
will.
winner.
It will. Yeah.
It will always
Because
have a
there's three.
winner.
There's
Yeah,
three.
Unless we, yeah. No.
Unless you-
Unless
that
you was to
split.
draw or something. Yeah. Zach,
Okay,
who are we going with first in the forward
Okay.
line? Should we go right wing?
let's go right wing then, and I've gone for Anthony.
Okay.
Anthony.
This is a
Yeah,
tap-in.
look.
It's a bit tapping, isn't it?
I think the thing is, I actually thought.
Is
look,
he even
this is
overrated
what I
at
mean.
this
This is
point?
what I was
'Cause,
putting question marks over it.
who actually rates him at this point, aside from Joe Tomlinson?
I think there are a lot of people that are still hoping
Joe-
he
yeah.
comes good. And I just don't. I feel like for a lot of these players you mentioned, like even with Kai Havertz, there are moments you see where you go, "Oh, like this might be what we see in the potential that it leads to." I don't feel like I've seen that at Manchester United. I really don't. Like I've seen what I think everybody knew he could already do: cut in from the left, shoot from outside the box, goes in top left-hand corner. He can do a bit of defensive
great
work.
at that, though.
And he is he? Like, is he doing that enough? He's not like Iron Robin levels of it, where
I saw him go on the right last weekend. I couldn't believe what I'd seen.
Yeah,
He went
yeah.
down the line
First
and
time
gave
he's
me
used
a
his
I was
right
like,
foot.
What the
Yeah.
hell
and
is
then,
going on here?
and then
Yeah,
he, like,
mad.
he loves a step
Did
over.
it against Wolves as well.
Loves a step over that. 50% of the time leads to nothing as well. I think this is somebody who you give him another 6 months at Manchester United, but I think then United will have to make a call and go, we can't continue with him on the right flank. And Ten Hag, I know he is his boy, but there's a part of me, I saw something I think online a couple of days ago, which really did make me kind of interested, was if Ten Hag gave Sancho the
Yeah, I saw
amount
that
of
as
minutes
well, yeah.
as he's giving Anthony at the moment, would Sancho outperform him? And I think, honestly, the answer might be yes, or at least contribute to more stuff. I think the answer might be yes. Sancho might not be as good, maybe defensively, as Anthony
He probably
is.
brings more to the
but
team.
He does, 100%. And whether, Sancho is also somebody who can take on a player but probably much more creative than Anthony is. Okay, he might not be able to cut in on the left and shoot with his left foot, but he can probably still score some great goals too as well. I think Anthony is somebody where, again, as I said, in 6 months, United need to make a big decision about him. And this isn't necessarily saying like, okay, we're going to sell you straight away. But it then might have to be like, okay, we need to give these minutes to somebody else, and somebody else that might help us out a little bit more. Or we actually have to look into the market and go out there and get another right winger. I remember for ages we were talking about that right wing and how United would fix it. And they tried Anthony. Maybe that was a lot to do with Ten Hag and him kind of recommending him. But at the moment, it's not working out, and I just don't see any potential. I really don't.
Yeah, I think with his playing style, he kind of needs to be hitting 15 goals in a season, and he's not got anywhere close.
And look, obviously, we see a lot of Premier League players as well where it takes a year and they get used to the league. And obviously, a lot of changes as well coming from the Netherlands, and obviously he's Brazilian as well, coming to the UK. A lot of different cultural changes. So maybe we'll start to see a little bit more this year. But so far in a Manchester United shirt, and already with the games that's happened this season, you're just not seeing enough. I really don't, especially for the money you've paid. And I know you mentioned earlier about, obviously, money doesn't necessarily mean rated or underrated or overrated. But with Anthony, I just still think he's overrated for where people maybe see him.
Yeah, I think the interest. I like the argument. I think I don't even necessarily think it's about price, but it's undoubted that Anthony is probably a little bit overrated by the Manchester United manager. I saw that clip about Sancho the other day as well. And I'm inclined to agree, although Sancho also has been very disappointing.
Yeah.
Also been too one-footed at United, at least when he's playing off the left. I would love to see Sancho given some minutes on the right. Doogie, what are we saying?
Mine's a similar vibe to
Okay.
Edison, this one, in that I think he's a good player, but I think he's been quite poor recently. We actually talked about him before the camera started rolling. Dejan Kulusevski.
Oh, you went okay? Because I did think about him.
I think he's a little bit overrated now, at least on the basis of what he did last season. I mean, since the World Cup, he's played 23 league games. He's got 1 goal and 4 assists. This is a 23-year-old. He should really be hitting his straps now. And he was so good for his first, 18 games in the league?
Yeah.
I think he got 13 goals and assists. Since they're 9 and 41.
Yeah.
Last year, Matthias Jensen of Brentford created more chances than him. Last year, 30.31 expected goals and assists per 90 last term. That was 78th in the league. That was between Brendan Aronson, who's now at Union Berlin, Leeds did go down, and Marcus Tavernier of Bournemouth. I just don't think he was good last year. And yes, it was a very poor Spurs side, but I don't see Kulusevski getting enough heat for underperforming last year.
Yeah. I think.
The injuries definitely did.
Do you also think as well
Make
maybe
a
he
difference.
started his Spurs career ahead of actually where he was?
Yeah, he's probably overperforming.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I think he's underperforming now.
Yeah.
I think there's two very strong shouts. I think with Kulusevski, what we need to remember as well is that before he went to Spurs, he'd underperformed at
Yeah.
Juve. Had obviously been amazing in that spell at Parma, hadn't he? But But yeah, like did disappoint at Juve. Those first 6 months. Although I must say, Spurs were not particularly good in those first few months where he was performing really well. I know Son was outperforming everyone as well at that point. But I do feel like, I don't know, I want to see what happens under Ange with Kulusevski. Whereas Anthony, I kind of agree. I don't know how much better Anthony is actually going to get at this point. I know he's still relatively young as well, but yeah, there's benefits to having Anthony in that Man United side, but I don't know how much better he's going to get. I'm going to go with Anthony. On this one.
Rated by who?
Okay.
That's a controversial shout.
I think both of them, but I think also Kulusevski is. Well, yeah, okay, maybe Kulusevski is more rated.
Stick by
but I'm going to go with Anthony. I just think Anthony is overrated by the Man United manager. Doesn't that necessarily mean who, it doesn't have to be people on Twitter or whoever. I just think, anyway, and maybe I'm just,
Luckily I've got two big ones.
Okay, let's go. Let's
go
go
left wing. From right to left, and then striker last, I think.
I can't believe I'm saying this because he's one of my favourite players and I love him. But Leroy Sané. Wow. At left wing. I think he's now been overtaken by so many players in that position. Not just Mbappe, Vinicius Jr., but Martinelli, Kvaratskhelia, Phil Foden, Jack Grealish, they're all probably ahead of Leroy Sané in the world rankings, and it shouldn't be like this. I thought, Sané's 27. In his last 2 fit years at Man City, I think he was over 10 goals and 10 assists in the league, in both campaigns. And he's approaching what should be his prime now. He's never scored more than 8 goals in a league campaign for Bayern. He's never started more than 22 league games in a season for Bayern. And he has been very good in the Champions League, which I would say as a caveat, but 0.57 expected goals and assists per 90 last term, and a Bayern side that dominant. I think he was outperformed by Kingsley Coman. He was probably better than Serge Gnabry, but this is a player who I just wanted to be, who I thought could have been, up there with Mbappe at one stage. He did genuinely look that promising in Man City. I think that front line of Sané, Sterling, Aguero, still my favourite front line in Premier League history, at least in terms of aesthetics. And Sané was a crucial part of that. And I just don't think he's kicked on enough. And he has been used in a variety of positions. They've obviously had managerial turnover there as well. But this is a player who I did genuinely think would be a top 5 in the world in this position, at the very least. I don't think he's anywhere near.
Yeah. I remember George in the office saying that he was a future Ballon d'Or winner. I do remember that. Sticks in the memory a lot. Strong shout with Leroy Sané, I can't lie. Another player who I do love.
Tough that Messi's still playing as well.
Yeah, so what...
my left winger. Okay, my left winger, I had a few thoughts. And originally this is actually where I put Diogo Jota on the left wing. But one of my other players can play out there. I also saw when I put a tweet out, a lot of people suggesting Mikhailo Mudryk too as well. Obviously,
like Anthony, is he rated?
Yeah.
Obviously, and he's still only been in
rated
6 months.
less than Anthony.
I kind of said that. And I also think when you put that tweet out and loads of people saying the same name, that probably shows you that actually everyone's got the same kind of opinion about it. Anyway. But the person I've gone for is Richarlison. Ooh. Again, another one who I actually think probably a lot of people do view similar to actually where he is performing. But there's a lot of faith going into him this season. And obviously, I'm playing on the left wing. Another person you could have possibly put in here, Heung-min Son. I know he had a really bad down year last year, but people were talking about, is he going to happen this year? I don't think it is. But anyway, I've gone for Richarlison. And that's because he is obviously the guy that Spurs put their whole future on, and that Spurs fans have put their whole future on after Harry Kane. I know obviously again he's playing my left wing, and really when I'm talking about him, is it going to be in this forward role? I just don't see it. I didn't see it even at Everton. Like, I thought he had interesting parts at Everton where he was their best player, but I think it's much easier to stick out for an Everton side that are struggling to get goals, and you are a little bit more of a flary player who can contribute a little bit, or contribute a decent amount actually, considering how many he got at Everton. But at Spurs, I just don't think he's going to be that guy. Look, this is also somebody who's played number 9 for Brazil at the World Cup, but that's only because Gabi Jesus got injured. Otherwise, I don't think he would have been starting up top for them. He is, again, I think a lot more people are coming to this conclusion that actually he's not as good as maybe first thought. But I think his attitude sometimes on the pitch, like I saw him against Manchester United, thought he was kind of poor in front of goal there. I don't really know what he adds sometimes to that Spurs attack. Obviously, things might take a little bit of time now with obviously how Ange is playing things. But I just don't think he is really that good. And I don't think he's ever going to be that good. And as well, like no one talking about the money side, but Spurs did spend a lot of money on him. £60 million, spent a lot of money on him to get him to Tottenham. I just don't think it's going to be that guy.
Or
Tapping FC.
tap what with Richarlison?
Richarlison, Anthony.
Yeah, 60 million on Richarlison is mad. And I do agree. I think there's a lot of faith being put in Richarlison if Spurs don't sign another striker this summer. But I'm going to have to go with the player who I also do really like. I think Leroy Sané has not contributed enough at Bayern Munich, and he had a tough first year. And I remember there were conversations about, this is the best position for him, this is the best position for him. I think if you're a player with the skill set of Leroy Sané, you can kind of make that work in a side like Bayern. I think last year, probably Kingsley Coman was their most effective winger, wasn't he? And I think his actual skill set, his actual technical ability is not on the level of Sané's, and yet he was outperforming him. So I'm going to go with Leroy Sané there. So that means the striker position, winner
Decides
takes
it
all.
all.
Winner takes all.
Okay, Diggs, you can go first, my friend.
Okay.
Set the scene.
I'm going for the most expensive player in football history in terms of combined fees. Romelu Lukaku. Lukaku. I think
is he rated
he at one stage looked like he could get into the conversation up with Suarez, Benzema, Lewandowski, Kane. I mean, he's more Kane's age group, to be fair, as the best striker of that sort of 5-year patch that Kane's also in.
Okay.
I thought he was potentially going to get there when he was at Everton. At Man United, one great year, disappointing the next year, then went to Inter Milan, was great at Inter Milan.
Yeah.
But 2 really poor years since. And you can't be a truly elite, legendary player if you just turn it on and off so much. And I just don't think he's got necessarily the right... His injury record's not potentially good enough to be a legend. His attitude at times probably not good enough to be a legend, at least in that Chelsea spell. And I think he's massively disappointed for a player that has cost 333 million euros in terms of combined fees. I think he's let down Inter Milan in the long term. And there's a reason that at his age, which isn't crazy old, I think he's 30,
yeah.
No one wants him this summer.
His next move is huge. Like for the way his career is considered, for the way whether he can get back on form, his next move has to be the one.
Flirting with Juve earlier this summer, burnt bridges with Inter. Yeah. You shouldn't have done that.
He's made a lot of decisions over the last few years which are highly questionable.
I know that's off the pitch as well, but I do genuinely think he's got the physical skill set to have been as good as Harry Kane. And I just don't think he's got close.
Yeah, no. I think that's a good shout, to be honest.
Different kind of players. But
only question is whether everybody considers him still highly.
This is true. It's a bit of a Zach Jalab theory.
Yeah.
My one.
Yeah. You did choose Anthony. And,
very true. Very true. I don't mind it.
Go on.
I've gone for, and I feel bad because I feel like when we spoke about overrated players, I've picked him a few times here. Lautaro Martinez. I think there is some. I think when people talk about Lautaro Martinez, they still consider this guy as one of the up-and-coming best strikers in the world. I just don't think he is. He's never going to be. He's had good moments. He's got his form with Inter Milan. Sometimes it's up here, sometimes it's down here. It's constantly like this. And to be one of these consistent and strikers that a huge club wants to go and buy you for, because he has been linked to big clubs, but the fee is going to be big. For him to actually make that move, you need to be consistent up top. You need to be having that. He just doesn't have that towards his game. Obviously, in the World Cup, I think I always remember him missing that chance in the final. It came down to the penalties in the end. But for Martinez to really kind of, I think when you talk about him in this casual footballing world, and about strikers that clubs can go out and look at. And we've been talking about the striker market so much this summer, and his name kept coming up, but nobody ever made the move for him. Because it would cost so much money, and I just don't think he is that level, or is going to achieve to the level of a striker worth 80 to 90 million pounds, which is what the fee's going to be to get him.
I think that's what he's worth. I think
he's
striker
you
market.
picked this at a strange time. I mean, he did score 28 goals last year.
Okay, but did he? How consistently is he doing that? Is it week in, week out, or is he he's very much a purple patch player where he'll go through a month of scoring fantastically and then a month of doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah. Maybe it was 27 actually.
I think he has. I think with Lautaro, he's had this reputation of like scoring the hard goals and not putting away the easy chances. I've always really liked Lautaro. I think he's a really good striker.
Then why has no one moved for him, Mikey?
Maybe the price point. And
because he's bang average.
Doing a final pitch.
Who's like
I'm attacking Mike.
The thing is, which
Mike
strikers have actually gone for big money this summer? Not very many.
You know who's gone for a
Hoyland
lot of big
went
money
for-
moves in his
so no-
career? Romelu Lukaku.
So how old is Martinez? Very quickly, let me have a
That's
look.
all right. I think he's about 24 or 25.
So 24 years old, right? And how much did Manchester United spend on Hoyland?
72 million.
So he's my age. He's 25 years old.
Yeah.
Right, that's a
Martinez.
flex.
Sorry. I don't know. I don't apologise. But United spent that money on a guy on Hoyland, who is super unproven yet. Obviously, had a good year last year for sure, but was injured at the moment, and maybe he is potentially going to be a big future striker. They spent probably the amount of money that would have taken to get Martinez this summer.
But not over the
I-
entire
I
contract,
didn't-
because his wages would be so much.
Yeah, I'm not actually sure that. I think Martinez would have commanded a bigger fee than Hoyland. I think there might be, I don't know, maybe there's other reasons why people haven't got in for Lautaro. He's older as well. You're not getting as many years out of him again yet. Wages, I think Inter would have been super, super keen to keep hold of him this summer. He is their most important attacker. I think this is biased. I just really like Lautaro Martinez, so I'm going to go for Lukaku. I also don't think Lukaku has been particularly rated over the last couple of years, though, and yeah,
sounds disappointing.
I'm not that enamored with either shout.
Do you have someone in mind for striker? Just off the top of your head, I've got some suggestions.
Off the top
here
of
as
my
well.
head, yeah, go on.
Well, I've got some suggestions
Yeah,
in
go on.
general for some of the positions. Somebody said Martinelli for left wing.
Harsh.
He
Very harsh.
said
And wrong.
he can score a few goals, but I just don't rate him.
Yeah,
Doesn't
that's
strike me as a
personal.
quality
That's
player.
very subjective.
Someone for left back said Dan Burn. Dan Burn got a lot of
Again,
praise
he's not
last
even a
year,
left back.
but
Yeah.
we've also had someone said Matthias Nunes, someone said McAllister.
McAllister. I can kind of see it with
midfield.
McAllister a bit, but then Liverpool did get him for a bargain fee.
There was another one for Rashford.
Harsh again.
It is quite hard. Valverde came up a few times. A lot of people said that
Federico
Valverde
Valverde
was considered this unbelievable player, and he is good, but not quite the level that people were talking about him.
He scores a lot of very sexy goals,
I think
which probably
he's
helps,
great, and I think his versatility is great. But I do kind of agree that he's probably not top 3 midfielders in the world.
Grealish came
Yeah,
up
I
quite a
agree
few
with that.
times. Grealish came up quite a few times. And I thought after the year he had
harsh.
last year, he was incredible.
Nah.
Some of these are stinking.
And there was also a shout for Calvert-Lewin. 7 goals in 35.
Yeah.
I mean,
Harsh.
that is just like kicking a dog when it's down.
Yeah, very much so.
Okay.
Ramsdale also came up as well. Ramsdale came up. But I thought he actually had a pretty good year after. For how much they paid for him as well.
Yeah. So
rebuilding
Lukaku has won it for Doogie there. So yeah, congratulations, mate.
Smashed it, dudes. Congratulations.
Good battle.
It was a good battle.
Yeah.
That was good fun. Again, let us know what you guys think in the comments below. Is there any other player you think that should have gone into one of these positions? I will state again,
Give us your teams.
was really hard to do this, especially with kind of not a lot of time to do the research. And I don't think, for a lot of them, we're not calling the players bad. I think a lot of it is just maybe,
overrated.
not to the level that people are talking about them. I've got a couple of quick fire questions just for us to go through as well whilst we're here. There might even throw a personal one in there as well.
Wow.
But we'll go with this one straight away. I was thinking, who's it from? It is right here from Nick, NLC_Ton. Hi Zach, do you think football could adopt rugby timekeeping rules so that when the ball is out of play, the clock stops, and that way we see a full 90 minutes played?
I think I used to be for this. And then actually, footballers are trained, conditioned to play, these kind of 55 to 60 minute, in play games. Essentially playing an extra half hour every week or twice a week, I think would be catastrophic for players, for injuries and stuff. It's just something we would never have seen before. Like football has always been played. There's always been that time in play in terms of kind of 50 to 60 minutes and stoppages. Not adding up that accurately, and already we're seeing 10, 15 minute stoppage time. Coming in this year because of changes to kind of the way that they calculate it. So, yeah, I wouldn't be in favour of that. I think it's too much.
Okay.
I tend to agree. I think rugby matches, they're obviously 10 minutes shorter for starters, and there's far less teams per division as well.
Is it rolling subs in rugby?
No, it's not rolling.
But can you make more subs?
You can make more subs if you can use the full 7 bench.
Oh, okay, you can. Maybe that would be needed as
yeah.
well for you to do that. Yeah.
And also bigger squads as well.
Yeah, bigger squads. They play fewer games.
Yeah,
I'm
true.
not saying it's easy by any means because
10 minutes less as well.
The physical contact is obviously such a different level, but they do play a lot less games.
And less games. Yeah.
Yeah, very true, very true. Another one here here. Gabby Vega to Saudi. That looks like that's done now.
Yeah.
Has that put the last nail in the La Liga coffin? How can La Liga become a top 2 league again?
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, Gabby Vega was always going to leave La Liga unless Real Madrid had not been able to sign Bellingham. Then maybe Gabby Vega would have gone there. But I don't think. Sorry, go on. I was going to say quickly, what does this put in there? Maybe the question's a little bit more. Maybe that's a question for like a continental club where you can actually properly go into it. But what do we quickly think about then Saudi getting a player like this who was literally meant to be going to Napoli a couple of days ago?
Exciting for their league. Really exciting for their league. I don't think it's a good career move from Gabry Vega. He's only 21. He hasn't played for the Spanish national team yet. He's had 1 year of consistent top flight football. He was wanted by Man City, Chelsea, PSG, so I'm not having the argument that, he's changing his life financially. He was already set for a massive pay rise. And he could have joined Saudi Arabia at any stage in the next 10 years. Instead, he's decided to go before he's really established himself as a top name in Europe. And people will be like, he could be bought back in 2-3 years. You have no idea whether he can be bought back in 2-3 years because he's on these massive wages in Saudi Arabia and hasn't been playing a standard of football comparable to a top 5 league. So I just don't think it's a guarantee that, Chelsea in 2 years, well, maybe Chelsea's a bad example, because they'll up anyone, but Man City in 2 years' time will be like, yes, I want to go sign that player that's been playing for Al Ali.
Yeah. I think it completely depends on what the quality of football we see in Saudi Arabia over the next year or two. Because there's a possibility that a signing, well, not just a signing like this, but a signing like this is evidence that the Saudi league is going for quite intelligent moves in some ways. Like Gabry Vega, I think, could be a really, really big player there. And if the kind of commercial targets of the Saudi Pro League are met, and if there is a lot of viewership, and if it does gain a big standing, then it might work for Gabry Vega. He may well be able to come back. But it's more reliant really on what happens, how successful the league is over the next couple of years, rather than necessarily his individual performances. I think he'll absolutely smash it there. Like he's in some ways cut out for a league where there's going to be a lot of changes. Like he's a goal scoring midfielder, all action. Like he'll absolutely tear it up there, I imagine.
Yeah, I wonder when, because I've yet to watch a game, though. I assume you guys have yet to watch a Saudi game. I wonder when that might change. Okay, this one kind of made me laugh. From Gabe, if each team's nickname were to come alive and play for them, which one would have the greatest boost to their 11? Maybe
team's nickname.
Maybe United if they had the Devil.
Okay,
maybe United
probably the Devil. Yeah.
I just wanted to say that one. I thought it was good fun. Final one then, if you can think of any before then. A quick.
Napoli with the little donkey. I don't know.
Yeah.
What's their nickname? That's a good shout. That's a good shout. What's Sunderland?
Black Cats.
The Black Cats.
You have a bit of make the team unlucky as well. Make the team unlucky. Well, there you go. Let us know.
Black Cats, aren't they?
Let us know your best shout for that one because that's good fun. And our final question right here from Oscar Martin: what is your go-to karaoke song and who's the best dancer in FD?
Ooh.
My go-to is Roses by Outkast. I do like it. It's a tough one to do, but it's a good fun one to do.
I always do London Bridge by Fergie.
How's it go?
How come every time you come around my London Bridge, when I Lundy? I added the last bit.
I do.
I was improv.
That gave me flashbacks to.
We've seen that a few times.
Generally topless.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that.
I'm sure there's a video out there somewhere.
Mikey?
Rock DJ by Robbie Williams.
Always is. Yeah,
always is.
Mikey is really good at karaoke.
Yeah.
You get very into it.
We need to do another one soon now. That's what. And best dancer. You've got some moves, Dukes. When Dukes
I feel like I commit.
Dukes does the worm.
You know the worm's coming. He spreads the room with his arms, and then the worm comes out. It's fantastic.
I remember splitting my trousers doing that at an FD party.
Didn't you give yourself a nosebleed doing it once or something? I can't remember what you hit your head.
If you've had a few drinks, you sometimes don't get the connection quite right going down.
And what I like about you do the worm, you do that one, don't you? You do the one where you lower yourself down.
Yeah.
Some people do the one that it's like that, but you do the one where it's like that, which I don't know which one's better actually, but. I think yours is the more unusual one.
I'll give Deegie it. Why not?
Yeah.
I'll give Deegie it. Let us know who you guys think is the best dancer. There was a question here as well that was, what are all the heights of people at FD? Let us.
People have really found this interesting since we started filming Transfer Talk, where we're standing up.
Yeah.
They
I've
can't
had
believe
people-
how tall people are. It's
I have
also
pe-
because
yeah.
the table is very low.
I've had people like meet me in person and be like, I did not realise you were this tall. Let us know what you think the heights of people in FD are in the comments.
Zach
below.
used to insist he was 6'3". He is not.
I'm 6'2".
Yeah.
Oh, what a shame.
So for a
What
long,
a
for
shame.
a long time, he said he was 6'3".
But there we have it. Let's end the Sunday vibes right there. I hope you guys have enjoyed. Again, lots of things for you guys to get involved in the comments below. Get in there. We'll try and reply to a few as well on Sunday. If you haven't already, then like the video if you've enjoyed it. Make sure you're subscribed to Football Daily so you stay up to date with the latest content from around the world of football and the latest transfers. Obviously, deadline day next week.
Yes.
We'll see some final shakers and movers. I think we'll be doing some stuff on the Friday as well.
Movers
So keep
and
your
shakers.
eyes. Is that what it said? Keep your eyes peeled for that on Friday. Click on screen right now for some more Football Daily content, and we'll see you guys tomorrow for Monday Vibes. It's not Monday Vibes. We'll see you guys for Tuesday Vibes.
Tuesday vibes.
Tuesday vibes.